To go back over Stockholm Syndrome. I've already talked about it before, but it took me a whole long time to actually get out what I was trying to say. I was just really nervous, I suppose, about pointing this out because, you say such things and people switch off. But it's been a year now, so I'm sure most of you already know this, and maybe some new people on my Facebook or whatever may not have heard of it. But Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is what we all have in society right now. So Stockholm Syndrome is actually from when you're captive. I know this sounds a little bit odd, but we are captive in a sense. We are taken hostage. I know that sounds insane. But for instance, if you wanted to go build a hut right now, where would you do such a thing? You can't, because you're owned. Right? You're taken hostage. You are given rules. And so what happens is, with Stockholm Syndrome, is somebody is held hostage, they have a captor, someone who basically kidnaps them. And what happens with this is, unlike in normal situations where a kidnapper would be cruel, the kidnapper actually is kind. So, as you can see here, when captors provide their victims with good living environment, the hostages begin to see them more favourably. Because normally the kidnappers are expected to treat their victims harshly. Cruel behaviour generates hatred. Kinder treatment does the opposite. So as we see, there's rules. You're not allowed to do certain things in society. You have to purchase your freedom. You have to purchase licenses. You have to purchase the right to move. You have to purchase the right to build a dwelling. Unlike insects and animals, we are literally entrapped more than insects and animals. People don't see this, though, because of Stockholm Syndrome. So they believe that the government taking those privileges is actually a kindness. That it's actually wonderful and helpful for everybody if the government or your captors are removing things from you. And even more beautiful is that they sell them back to you. They give them back if you follow the correct rules and be a good little slave. So this is absolutely what has happened. Now, don't get me wrong where I say the government, okay? I'm using that as an example, but I don't believe the government is behind this. They are normal people like you and me who are employed like you and me, and they just do their job that they're told to do. They are told to do their job, and that is a key word because they are also held captive. So again, like, the problem with this is you get an emotional attachment and you cannot leave, okay? So, of course, you're held captive, you can't leave, there's no way to leave, otherwise you risk your survival, which is exactly what would happen. So you're not allowed food and shelter unless you're working, unless you're a slave these days, unless you own a property. You could not, for instance, go out and make a mud hut tomorrow in a bush because you don't own the bush. Everybody else owns the bush. Everything else owns the bush. The government owns the bush. Above them, the elites own the bush. So you can't actually build a dwelling and survive without them. So this is where the Stockholm Syndrome comes in as well, because this is a necessity. As it says, adopted people develop a habit of pleasing their kidnappers. That's because your kidnappers are in charge of everything. So you know that to get ahead, you have to please them. That's what we see in society with people. You want to escape harsh treatment or even murder. I mean, that is absolutely for sure, because if you break any of these mundane, stupid rules that are mostly circled around the fact that you could survive without them, the harsh treatment will be jail. That is a literal translation of our circumstance, because this is just so absolutely clear that this is what has happened to everybody. People who have Stockholm Syndrome will even help their captors keep other people captive or keep themselves captive. We do see that. People don't say, actually, no, this is a stupid rule. I'm not agreeing to that. We call up the police on other people that are breaking that rule because we follow that rule, and it's not fair that we should have to follow it and they shouldn't. And it's just ridiculous. It pins us against each other. So, symptoms here. Showing admiration for the abductors. We absolutely see that. There are people who love the government, love the elites, think this world's wonderful and great. And they're quite happy to be a slave their whole life, work day in, day out, for nothing but monetary items. By that I mean these people seem to be quite content with themselves, working constantly their whole lives just to buy more stuff. Because really it doesn't lead anywhere other than that. And if that's what you think the purpose of life is, then Stockholm Syndrome most certainly has worked well on you, because that's not the purpose of life. You shouldn't be a slave, just gaining fake monopoly money just to buy things that really you don't actually need. You don't need that to survive, and you certainly don't learn anything from it. So completely pointless. Resisting rescue attempts. For instance, if someone come tomorrow and said, hey, you can come into the bush with me, and we can build a hut, or we can do this, or we can do that, and you can do whatever you like every single day, you'll say no, because you miss out on all those little treats and I suppose I would describe it as lollies that you get from the government. Please stay with us, we'll give you a lolly, we'll give you a little bit more money, we'll give you a cool thing that you can buy. You defend the kidnappers. Of course, there will be people who will defend this left, right and centre. Oh, we need the government. We need the government for rules. We need the government for law enforcement, even though you can blatantly see, for the most part, the police do not protect anybody. It's more about revenue and gaining money. And in fact, I would say I could go to a grown man and he would protect me a hell of a lot more than a police officer would these days. So, but people will defend that. People will defend the fact that they make you work 3 months of the year for free. When you take into account how much tax is, and then actually it becomes more like 6 months, because you're paying tax on every single thing that you purchase too. And do you feel like you get that money back? Do you feel like you get what you want out of that? Do you feel like you're fulfilled in your life with them taking your money? And I personally haven't had anything wonderful happen from that. So that'll be another way of defending them. Trying to please the abductors. Right. So I'm a good law-abiding citizen, okay? I've never been to jail. I've never been in trouble or anything like that. Why is that? Because if I rebel, or if I do something crazy, or if I actually just do what I please without harming somebody, which would be, as I say, maybe I would go build a little mud hut in a forest just because I would enjoy doing such a thing. I can't do that. So to try to please the abductors, what do people do? They go to work, they get approval through certification through the government. By that I mean the government gives us specified things that we should learn, which oftentimes are completely incorrect as far as science goes. And then we get a certificate saying that we passed that, and now we can teach other people all the lies that they tell us. Again, that's the trying to please abductors thing, because really most of us know half the stuff that we learn is incorrect or not the best efficient way to do it. Refusal to testify against captors. That'd be the case of like what I'm doing. Most people don't do this. They don't point it out. So that's definitely a given. Most people don't do that. And refusal to run away from the abductors. Yeah, as I said, if you had the opportunity to get away, you don't really. And it's really sad, because Stockholm Syndrome is most certainly it. We've been held captive. We are enslaved. We have to spend our money on things that we don't want to. We work our whole lives just to buy more things. Our lives have been taken from us. Here, the captive ones are isolated from the outside world. That is true. We can't even imagine what life would be like without the government, right? That's the idea. They want you to see only the viewpoint of the kidnappers. Of course, the elite know this, and that's why they've utilised this, okay? They've done it very efficiently. They're very intelligent people, okay? So they've done this in such a way that it's almost impossible to see. But it is right there in front of us. You begin to understand the circumstances that may have forced the captive to commit the crime, right? So we're not allowed to enslave other people. We're not allowed to steal money from other people. We're not allowed to tell other people that they can't live or survive, but they can. And we feel sympathetic towards it. Oh, well, I can understand why they do that. I can understand why they give us these rules, and I can understand why we're not allowed to just build a hut, or even in some places not even allowed to build vegetables and fruit, grow vegetables and fruits on your own property. It's just absolutely ridiculous. If you can't see that we're held captive, I'm sorry, I can't help you any further than this video, but we certainly are. Kidnapped people begin to develop a physical, emotional attachment with their abductors. I mean, as I said, that's for sure, because people quite love the government. They talk wonderful things about it, and it always shocks me when it happens, because I go, well, what have they actually done for you? And they don't really, they keep dangerous people away from me. It's like, well, I mean, your husband, you could do that. I mean, the community could do that, but they don't. Well, I mean, that might be because of the way the system is, because you're not even taught how to defend yourself. Because the government will do that for you. Hey, we'll come defend you for you. Just call us on this number and we'll be there. But you'll hear time and time again that that's not really actually the case. A lot of people are left. I know one time I was in a very dangerous situation when I was younger, and I called the police. My life was immediately in danger. It took them 3 hours to help me. So again, it's not actually as good as it sounds. Abducted people develop a habit of pleasing their kidnappers. Yes, we have been over this. At first, it is a necessity, of course, because when you move out of home, you're kind of like, what? I have to pay tax? What? I have to do this? I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to get a job. That's wasting my life, you know? But then we have to, because it's a necessity. How are we going to buy things? How are we going to pay our rent? So that's what they're relying on. This especially develop a sort of dependence on the abductors. Of course, we are completely dependent on our abductors, but we aren't really in the same stroke. It seems that way. But, you know, you could very well go build your own property right now if you wanted. You could very well go grow some fruit and vegetables. You could very well survive in the forest if you wanted to. So that whole dependence on the abductor isn't actually there. That is brainwashing. They've basically made society seem so glorified and wonderful that you wouldn't want to do such a thing. Actually, society isn't glorified and wonderful. Everyone's got mental illnesses. To be honest, I think in most part this is actually due to society. These mental illnesses, people who suffer from depression, for the most part, are lacking intimate connection with somebody. They are lacking love. They are lacking people caring about them and kindness, and that is totally to do with society. You find people that are even schizophrenics that I've met. Sometimes I'm like, well, actually what they're saying is true. So they're not actually schizophrenic. They've just actually uncovered a whole lot of dark stuff, and, you know, a lot of the time anyway. Not every time. So yeah, a lot of these psychological issues that we have are to do with things like Stockholm Syndrome. You couldn't, for instance, say, oh, that poor abused person has Stockholm Syndrome. It's like, well, so does everyone, actually. So does everybody. So yeah, isolated from the outside world, isolated from a different way of life. We only know society, we only know government, we only know being owned, we only know following rules. You know, you essentially have a slave score, so if you follow the rules really well, then you get ahead in life, and if you don't, well, you end up in jail or held even further captive, all your privileges and rights stripped from you because you're not following rules. We have people in jail right now that haven't even harmed anybody in their whole entire lives. They've never laid a finger on anybody else, and they're in jail because the government tells them that they're not allowed to use a certain substance, or they're not allowed to steal fruit from a tree. I've heard of people going to jail for stealing food, trying to survive. So, you know, this is just absolutely ridiculous. So I just wanted to go back over this because it took me a little while to get it out last time. And again, hopefully for somebody at least, this helps you see things as they really are, because it really is hard to see things as they really are. The system has been designed extremely well. So TV, it's all drama and fake and repetitive nonsense to keep us at a low frequency. We've got music. As you know, music makes you feel a certain way about certain things. So that also influences people and how they behave as well. And then you've got obviously the day-to-day life of everything. They're going to work, they're coming home, now you're tired, now you don't look anything up, now you don't have time to read anything. Keep you occupied so you don't realise you're being held captive. Keep you occupied so you don't realise how bad and distasteful and wrong this kind of society is, where you know, we think the government is vote for, owned by us, but it is not. It is absolutely not. Everybody in New Zealand that I know, just about everybody I should say, is against 1080, and yet they've still been dropping it for years and years and years now. So it is not people owned. You need to get that out of your head. It is not even owned. The government doesn't even own itself. The government in turn is owned by the Queen, and then the Queen is actually, in my opinion, owned by the Vatican. And then there are a very small minority of elite men in charge of that. So it goes right back, pyramid scheme, few guys at the top, controlling all of us. So again, hopefully that, I don't know, helps wake somebody up, because this world is not at all what it seems.